Lesson 26, Legislating, How a Bill Becomes a Law. This is the process through which we get our laws. This is the meat of being a member of Congress. First and foremost, congressmen are legislators. They write laws. They work on legislation, the laws for our country. A bill is an idea for a law. Only members of Congress can introduce bills. Private citizens cannot. Members of the President's administration cannot. Only members of Congress can actually introduce bills in Congress. Now, ideas for bills can come from anywhere, from certainly members of Congress, but from private citizens, the White House, special interest groups, political parties. Appropriation bills are spending bills. Revenue bills are tax bills. Remember, these special types of bills must begin or originate in the House of Representatives. Congress can also pass resolutions. These are formal statements expressing lawmakers' opinions. This is what we are debating in our Senate class this semester. We are debating resolutions, formal statements expressing our opinion on particular issues. Now, if Congress passes a joint resolution, this is the same resolution that's introduced in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. We call it a joint resolution. And then if the president signs it, a joint resolution can become law. But usually resolutions are simply just statements by one chamber or the other on a particular issue, showing support for a particular issue or concern. All of our constitutional amendments that have been introduced in Congress must be introduced as joint resolutions. It's the same wording, the exact same wording of the amendment, the proposed amendment. It's introduced in the House, it's introduced in the Senate, the same wording, and it must pass both the House and the Senate by a 2/3 vote. We know that. And then that joint resolution, proposed amendment, goes to the states for a 3/4 ratification. Okay, let's take you through the procedure here now. In the House, a representative, and then we have the Senate. In the House, the representative hands his or her bill to the House clerk. In the Senate, the senator would actually announce his bill on the floor in a speech, oftentimes during morning business. In the House, the bill is given a number, like H.R. 1, meaning House of Representatives number 1. That's the first bill introduced into a new session of Congress. In the House, it would be H.R. 1. In the Senate, it would simply be given S1, the first bill in that Senate session introduced, S1. The second bill would be S2. Second House bill would be H.R. 2. You get the idea. Okay, after introduction, this is the important part, the bill is sent to the appropriate standing committee. If a bill is introduced on farming, it would be sent to the Agriculture Committee. So the bill is going to be sent to the committee for work, for consideration. And that committee will have jurisdiction over that bill. Committees have life and death power over bills. It's where a bill is written, in committee. It's placed on the committee calendar. Now, this is the power of the chairperson as referenced in lesson 25. The chairperson decides what to do with the bill. The chairperson can actually push the bill aside and brush it away, not even consider it, not even allow the committee to work on the bill. That's called pigeonholing the bill. To pigeonhole the bill is to ignore the bill, to not consider it. A bill is killed if it's pigeonholed. If the committee decides to work on the bill, it will be sent to a subcommittee of the committee for what we call markup. This is the actual writing of the bill. The bill is written in subcommittee. It's marked up. It's written. It's put together. It's worked on. They'll hold public hearings. They'll have experts come in that industry to testify about the bill, about the possible impact and effects that the bill will have if made into law. So public hearings are held on the bill, and experts come in. This is all during subcommittee work, or what we call markup. Once the bill is marked up in subcommittee, it's sent back to the standing committee for a vote. The standing committee here now can vote to kill the bill outright or can vote to pass the bill. So again, committees are very powerful. The chairperson, very, very important, obviously, where the action happens. Again, the options here that the committee has when receiving a bill, it can be pigeonholed, meaning ignored and died. The committee can simply pass the bill without changes. More than likely, it will be sent to markup for the subcommittee. These are when the hearings are held. Experts come in. They could replace the original bill with an alternate bill, or they could kill the bill outright by a majority vote on the committee. If the bill gets out of committee, now it goes to the floor for floor debate. In the House, the Rules Committee picks which bills to consider and sets time limits for debate. There's a time limit for debate in the House. In the Senate, there is no time limit, and they are considered in order from the Senate calendar. No time limit for debate in the Senate. Now, the way we operate our class, even though it's modeled after the Senate, we actually use House rules. We have a time limit for our debates. But in reality, the Senate does have no time limit. The Senate can actually filibuster a bill. You've heard this term before, I'm sure. A filibuster is a tactic. It's a stalling tactic. It's what the minority can use to, quote, talk to death a bill. Basically, what you are doing when you're filibustering is you are delaying action on whatever it is the Senate is considering. The House does not have the filibuster option. This is only an option in the Senate to filibuster. And the way it works, the senator gets control of the floor, and he simply talks, and he talks, and he talks, and he talks, and then he may yield the floor to another senator to talk and talk and talk and talk, to a fellow colleague who agrees to talk, to talk, to talk. And what happens is what you're hoping to do is to frustrate the sponsors of the bill enough that the sponsors of the bill will withdraw the bill for consideration. That's what you want. You're trying to withdraw the bill from consideration when you filibuster because you're throwing a monkey wrench in the proceedings of the Senate. You're slowing down the Senate. Again, it's a stalling tactic. You're not allowing anything to happen. It's extreme delay. And so to move on with business, the hope is that the sponsors of the bill will withdraw the bill for consideration before the Senate. It's filibuster. Now, you can end the filibuster with 60 votes. We call this cloture. It's actually when you invoke cloture, there's no more debate in the Senate on that particular issue before the Senate, and you go to a straight vote at that point. So cloture ends debate. So in the Senate, in reality, the governing majority is not 51 senators, it's 60 senators. 60 senators, a supermajority is needed to govern in the Senate. Not 51, but 60, because 60 is needed to invoke cloture, to end debate, to move on. That's a very important concept. Now in the House, when the House debates, they only accept amendments that are relevant or germane to the bill. However, in the Senate, you can attach a rider. These are totally unrelated amendments to the bill. For example, that hypothetical agriculture bill that was considered, the farming bill is considered, a rider, for example, would be a bill on banking, something totally unrelated to the bill at hand. That's called a rider. You're not allowed to do that in the House, but in the Senate you are. House votes by computer. Simple majority is needed for passage. In the Senate, you have a voice vote. You stand up and be counted. And a simple majority is actually needed to pass the bill. But to get to that point, to end the filibuster, you need a supermajority of 60 votes. So 51 for passage, but 60 to actually get things done in the Senate. All right, so you had this bill introduced in the House, a similar bill introduced in the Senate. You have two different versions of the same bill. So this is when the bill goes to conference committee. Okay, because we have to get one version of the bill, one version, one law. It cannot be two versions of the same law, right? So it goes to conference committee. This is a joint committee. The House and the Senate will pick members of their committee who have worked on the bill to go to conference, and they'll work out the differences. They want to get this identical version, one version. We often refer to this conference bill as a compromise bill. But you have a House bill, you have a Senate bill, they're working out the differences. We call it a compromise bill. And then the compromise bill goes back to the House and the Senate for a final vote. And you need a simple majority on the compromise bill to pass. Final passage. Now this is where the bill goes to the president to sign it for it to become law. And oftentimes it's a big ceremony in the White House, and members of Congress who worked on the bill will stand behind the president. These are the sponsors of the bill from that committee. Oftentimes they spent many long hours, sessions working on this bill, and the president signs the bill and have a big signing ceremony in which the president gives every single member of Congress who worked on the bill a pen as a memento of that the member of Congress worked hard on this law. Now, if the president does nothing for 10 days, doesn't sign the bill, and Congress is in session, it still becomes law. The president does not have to sign the bill for it to become law if Congress is in session. So not all bills require presidential approval. Now, the president can sign a veto, literally reject the bill by signing a veto, saying, no, I do not like this bill. If the president signs a veto for the bill will go back to Congress for an override vote. Now, this is a different vote. 2/3 of both houses of Congress are required to override the veto. That would be 290 House members, 67 senators. That's a really big majority needed to override a veto. It's very difficult to override a veto, to get those type of numbers in both houses, 2/3 of both houses needed. So only 34 senators or 146 House members simply have to agree with the president's point of view needed in order to sustain a presidential veto. If the president cannot get 34 senators or 146 House members, that's a pretty weak president. Now, the pocket veto, remember, if the president does not sign the bill for 10 days, it's in session, it becomes law. But if Congress is not in session, the bill is vetoed. This is called a pocket veto. The president does not sign a veto, but the bill is still vetoed because he does nothing for 10 days and Congress is not in session. The pocket veto. He does this maybe to avoid taking an official position on the bill, maybe he wants to avoid a congressional confrontation. The pocket veto. And that concludes Lesson 26. And our last lesson on this unit will be the powers of Congress, Lesson 27.